Hi everyone. Today's book recommendation is not an indie book rec. It is actually an older novel, and it is, of course, by my favorite childhood author, L.J. Smith. So let's get into Dark Visions. L.J. Smith's work I kind of put into different categories. Strange Visions is my favorite trilogy. Nightworld is the series that got me into reading and writing ultimately, and I love it to death. So it holds a special place in my heart just for that. And then Secret Circle is probably her best written trilogy. And the Forbidden Game trilogy is definitely one of her darker works. And then you have, of course, I honestly can't remember the name of it now, but she wrote a couple books that were more aimed at children, and that one's pretty good for what it is, too. But Strange Visions holds a particularly special place in my annals of reading, I suppose, just because the characters, I think, really are what did it for me. So we have Caitlin. She can sort of see things, but she doesn't just see them like visions. She gets something in her head and she has to draw it out. It's like an itch. It's an urge. And she does that, and she can never completely comprehend it. So at the beginning of the story, she's in class and she just sees a child's face and a spider web, and she draws it out. And it just bothers her because she can't completely figure out what it means. She has this foreboding feeling. She doesn't know what to do about it. She just knows that something bad's going to happen. And at one point she thinks something like, well, what am I supposed to do? Just tell kids to stay away from spider webs? She doesn't know what her powers do. So when she leaves school that day, a child ends up getting hit by a car, and that's when the whole thing comes together for her, when she can't do anything about it. Because, cracking the windshield, the spider web, child's face, that kind of thing. So it really devastates her that she just can't do anything about it. And a man comes to her, his name's Mr. Zeitz, and offers her a place at sort of his small academy. It's basically like a rooming house with other people with unusual powers, and he's meant to train them and help them hone their skills. What follows is just this really dark and very adventurous and exciting story. And of course, we have the L.J. Smith love triangle, which I just absolutely adore. Now, I make no secrets about this. One of my favorite things about this trilogy is simply Gabriel. Gabriel is kind of, I guess, the epitome of the guy I always dreamed about when I was a bit younger, the very moody, kind of dark, but also very sensitive soul that kind of hides it beneath all his bravado. And he's just, I love everything about his character. He's tormented, but he just falls for Caitlin. And one of my favorite quotes comes from that book, and it's something about how she's fire and strange music, and he wants to hold her, not just to love her, but to protect her, to show her that he can. And it's just so beautiful, the way that their relationship ends up intertwining along with the story. And then you have, of course, Rob, who's just this very gentle, very sweet man who is also pretty powerful, but he's so sensitive, and it's kind of implied he's a little bit slow, or not quite slow, but that he doesn't quite understand interpersonal relationships, and Caitlin is this first one that helps him through that. So as the story goes, they start finding out that there's a lot more to Mr. Zeitz's school than meets the eye, and it actually ends up that he's really probably not one of the good guys, and that there's a lot of ominous undertones to what he's doing. And the journey they go on, they venture from where they are to Oregon and back, and get caught up in all of this really dark psychological sort of psychic powers kind of thing. And it's just really hard to really put into words. I probably read this thing a million times, to the point that my old books are kind of worn out, and I had to buy the new one just to keep up with it so I could keep reading it without having my books fall apart. But the characters are just so amazing in this. Caitlin is just such a strong, yet also pretty vulnerable teenager, and I think she's really easy for a lot of girls to relate to. And then, of course, she has the friends that she makes there. She's got Rob, she's got I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but there's these two other characters, a girl and a guy, that she ends up getting pretty close with. And they're all necessary too. All 5 characters are needed for this ultimate sort of showdown that happens between Mr. Zeitz and the students. And the ending goes into this sort of like really dark territory. And I really don't want to spoil too much, but there's this particular torment that Caitlin goes through. It's not violent or gory like when you think of Stephen King or Dean Koontz, but it's just like, along with the themes of the story, it's very psychologically disturbing. And I love how it all comes together. Like, there's the darkness, there's the paranormal, there's the romance, but there's still some haunting to it. There's just very unsettling things that happen to other people they found out used to be students, and their minds are almost pretty much gone. And I think one of the creepiest parts in the whole series is there's one of the students whose mind is almost gone, and he's sort of like, he's not sure who to lash out at, either Mr. Zeitz or one of his newer students, but he's just sitting there on the floor like screaming, mother, and just something about it just chills me every time I read it. That's just the power that old L.J. Smith books have on me. They're just so, they get right to your soul in a lot of ways. And the writing is pretty simplistic to what young adult is now, but she really was very careful about picking and choosing her words, about where the plot went, about where the characters went, and every little thing is just right down to the last detail. There's a purpose behind it. Not a single word in any of her stories are wasted. Strange Visions is just one of the best, most emotionally engaging stories I can think of to get into. And I don't really care what age you are, or if you're into any sort of slightly romantic or paranormal thing at all, you really have to check this series out. It is, I just don't have the words for it. It's a part of my childhood, but there's so much richness to what she does. Like, she's very careful about the magic and mythology that she weaves together. You can tell that she's deeply researched everything that she's done, not just in this series, but in all of them. And it really does come to mix and match with her character development and the adventure side of everything. All these elements L.J. Smith just weaves together in a story that is unforgettable, that is passionate, that is just dark and kind of disturbing, but also romantic. It's just got all of the elements you could possibly ask for in a book. Even though it is an older book, I recommend this very, very strongly. It's definitely shaped a big part of how I look at characters and plot and storyline and elements like that when I'm writing. And I can't get enough of this woman's work. I really can't. Like, her newer stuff's a bit strange, but there's still something very magical about the way that she weaves a story together and has the characters come to life, and they all just hold a special place in your heart just for how intricate they are, for how real they are, for how much of they could just be someone that we know if our world was just a little bit weirder than it already is. For reviews on Amazon, check out the link above or below, depending on the format you're watching, and dive right in. It's a great story. I love everything about it, and I really think that you all would too. Bye-bye.